Agenda item Alpha A, 23-24 balanced budget. Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor McCaw and members of council. I am pleased to report since last week the general fund is balanced. I'm going to go through some of the changes that we made since last week and explain what they are. Most of the other funds are balanced as well. We'll probably go through those at the next work session just to give you a little more information before we do our one-on-ones. You see the budget book, and we do the big budget presentations. The one fund we are still working on is Capital Improvement Fund. We need to check some things, and HERF as well. So you'll get all that information in a couple of weeks along with your budget books. So here's where we ended up in the general fund for next year. I'll go through specific changes in revenue on the next slide. Our total budget, I apologize, Mayor, I gave you the wrong information this morning during our meeting. It looks like our total budget's going to end up around $165 million. $60 million of that is streets infrastructure grants. It's similar to last year. We didn't go quite as full bore on grants. I think I mentioned last week that last year the infrastructure bill was signed. We put in a whole lot of placeholders for potential grants we might get. We've learned a lot since last year, but we're still putting in a lot of grants, we're planning to put in for a lot of grants, especially for streets infrastructure, which are pretty big dollar grants. So you will see more information about that as well. So the personnel requests did go up a little bit. Most of that was due to adjusting overtime and part-time budgets, which we didn't have a chance to do before last week's presentation. Capital went up a little bit. That's due to vehicles being entered in. We went over the vehicles last time. They hadn't been entered into the capital budget yet. And I think the animal control design went in there as well. And I had a note on my presentation from last week that somebody asked what our bond payment was for the Schneider Electric debt. I don't remember who it was, but just to close that loop, our bond payment next year will be $3,237,704.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, William. All right, so where we made some changes to general fund revenue. After looking at the sales tax projections, we did decide to increase the sales tax projection from 3% to 4%. We should get the April numbers in this week. David is out at the moment. He should be back tomorrow. And hopefully we have that information. We felt going to 4% was still a pretty safe bet. That added about $251,000 to our revenue. And then we always go through and double check what actuals were for last year, where we ended up on various accounts and how those accounts are tracking for the current year. And so we adjusted fuel sales up. That was based on actuals from last year and projections. We all know the price of fuel is fluctuating, but it's still staying up relatively high. Labor charges and fluids, those are primarily when we have over 20 agreements with outside government agencies to work on their mainly heavy equipment and heavy vehicles. We increased those prices last year, and so some small increases there on labor. And same with aquatics and sports. We take a look as far as the Cove goes. We adjusted the revenue projection to where we ended last year, and we know that we're trending slightly higher this year. So we ticked up both aquatics and sports.
Yes, ma'am.
Victoria, I have the number you present, not you, or maybe it was when we were presented a projected number last time back in, or maybe it was April, but it might have been March, because I think one of those times got carried over. But is that 3%? increase, was that based, like the number we got, was that with the 3%, the 25,884,000? That was 3% increase at that time?
Mayor McCaw, Mayor Pro Tem Humphrey, what $25 million?
In the, was it March or April?
Revenue.
Yeah, the
Projection
revenue
first.
number, the one we just changed from 3 to 4%.
Sales tax.
That, yeah, TPT,
Yes.
sorry, TPT. So that was with 3%.
Yeah,
Yes. And
Well, hold on just a second, Victoria. Mayor McCaw, Mayor Pro Tem Humphrey, at the time, we were being pretty conservative on our revenue projections because it seemed like the trend for the revenue growth was drifting downward at that time. Since that time, we've seen a recovery over the last couple months, and we're hoping to see that again with this next month's numbers coming in hopefully later this week. So as a result, that's why we made the decision to go to 4% from 3% growth in the sales tax.
Okay.
And we base that number on both the league gives us their projections, and then we take a close look at what our actuals are and usually project somewhere in between that. We usually don't project up to, the league's numbers are usually better than what we project. We tend to project a more conservative number.
Hasn't our sales tax been coming in at least double that every time we get a report?
Well, Mayor McCaw, Mayor Pro Tem Humphrey, that gets to Victoria's point that actually, yes, our revenue has been trending probably double that amount for growth. We always try to remain more conservative than the top line numbers just to make sure that we don't see any budget problems going into the next fiscal year after
Yeah.
that. So we're always more conservative than that
No,
number.
I understand building in cushion. I just didn't understand why it was so. It just feels like it's a bigger cushion this time around. But it might just be my memory, and maybe we always.
Well, they were kidding me about my crystal ball and the economy this morning, and I always see a cloudy view of the economy. So I tend to be more conservative when betting on the economy in the future. So.
And the budget last time was, the revenue was 20 million, or the same thing.
For sales
Kind of-
tax,
Yeah,
Jen, did you bring?
I guess I could just figure out what 4%, what that number would be.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Humphrey, the TPD is broken down into general fund and CIF, so I believe the 20 million is general fund, and then CIF part of it is about 5 billion.
Okay, I thought sorry, just a second. I still have last week in here. So the general fund, with the 49, the old number with the 49,692,000, that how much of that was TPT?
It was about, I believe, 20 million.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So on LTAF, we increased the transfer out to 570,000. We did go ahead and make some changes. The new bus stops that were proposed in the budget at around 540,000, we decided to take those out and instead budget 200,000 to do a transit master plan for next year, which will include route study, ridership study, and so on, and then determine where new stops need to be before budgeting for them. There are still, from previous years, money in the budget to address certain stops, especially Walmart. So those haven't been taken out, just the amount for next year.
Sir.
Real quick, we're doing a ridership study right now with the transit, right?
No, Mr. Benning.
How are we tracking the fares?
We're tracking the riders in terms of the change in the routes, Mr. Benning.
Okay.
And then trying to make a determination as to the effectiveness of going to the no-fare system. The study that Victoria is referring to will be a routing study and an overall study of the system.
Okay.
And a formal study done by a consultant.
Okay.
Transfer out from the general fund to the HERF fund, $2 million. That's for the Buffalo Soldier Trail extension. And once again, that came from the additional amount of income tax that we'll see next year because of the state's adjustments to the income tax going to a flat tax. We'll receive more next year, more the following year, but slightly less. And then we'll dip below what we have previously been getting the third year. Transfer in from the capital improvement fund for animal control expansion for $2 million. And then the notes payable proceeds, that is to finance the vehicles that are proposed in the budget.
Sorry, I have to go back.
Go ahead. Good.
Just to the whole TPT thing. Because it sounded like a lot more than the change in the number between the number last week, which TPT was around 20 million, and now TPT makes up 25 million. I think that's a greater increase, right, than 4%.
Mayor
Is that-
McCaw, Mayor Pro Tem Humphrey, I think it would
Shaking her head.
I think it would be if we pull those presentations and we can look at them after the work session and look at what the numbers were, and we can get you exactly what the breakdown was. I think we did that in the first presentation.
Okay. Mayor McCaw, Mayor Pro Tem Humphrey, if I could just ask you a question, so I could clarify what I think you're trying to ask. So we get sales tax revenue in, TPT revenue in, and it is split between two funds. It is split between the general fund and it's split between the capital improvements fund. The capital improvements fund is about a quarter or 20% of the overall sales tax.
You
So-
just answered my question. Thank you. I
so
forgot.
the addition of the two is the 25.
Yeah, okay.
20 million is the general fund portion.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for reading my brain.
Okay.
He has the crystal ball.
1% of 20 million.
Well, yeah, it was just like, I
And
forgot about the.
And that's just the increase, so it's about.
That's the total amount.
8.4 return is what we're looking at.
Yeah, you're looking at 4% over last year to get to the 25 million. Okay.
Okay, as I think Chuck mentioned, the city has a dedicated half cent of our sales tax revenue to the capital improvement fund. So that half cent equates to approximately 5 million a year. And so what we have tried to do over the past couple of years as we've seen more money come into the capital improvement fund, or we've gotten more money from things like the ARPA funds. Traditionally, we have tried to shift operating capital into the general fund, and which is the projects that you see here. We've tried to maintain the capital improvement fund for major projects, not things like vehicles or generator replacements.
Be expensive.
So we were successful in that, and all of the projects on here were shifted into the general fund. Projects like the animal control expansion, the Forest Dorner of multi-use path replacement, your Tacoma Sports Field pedestrian bridge, the Veterans Park Pavilion power upgrade. Those are all strategic plan items. The animal control expansion was specifically listed in the strategic plan, and then the others are part of the parks master plan. Nothing else on this list has changed except for we did have to go back and add the library printer. That's the main public printer. They do charge for people to print from it, so it's end of life and needs to be replaced. So then the two projects that would be in the capital improvement fund would be the purchase of the half-acre lot beside Fire Station 2 and the grant match for the Land Water Conservation Fund grant. The grant would be about $3 million. The city would be responsible for $1.5 million. It looks like there's another grant that we can apply for to piggyback onto our match. So our total match should be $500,000. This is again part of the Parks Master Plan and your strategic plan. That would accomplish the sewer run from the OICC down to the Domingo Pies complex, construction of restrooms, a small parking lot along Tacoma Street, also addressing some of the safety issues with cars driving quickly, which the pedestrian bridge also does, and then some RV parking down by the pump track.
Yes, sir.
The sewer main line, I know we need it. How's that running? Is that running the street with the street, or where are we going to get it from point A to point B? Are we gonna have any?
Through the sports complex, Sharon.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of council, the exact alignment will be worked out as part of the design, but yes, it's through the sports complex to carry it down from its current endpoint down to the Domingo Pies complex.
It's not running along
Yeah,
Tacoma.
yeah, I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
tear up Tacoma for that.
I don't want to tear up any of it. That's what I'm asking.
Stone, the Bill Stone area,
Uh-huh.
that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Tear up the dirt.
Okay, so again, this is a pretty short presentation, but Jen is still very hard at work, crossing all the i's and dotting all the t's on the budget, trying to get everything balanced so she can start cranking on your draft budget books to get out before the Memorial Day weekend. Again, we'll go over some more information at your next work session, but we always include some future budget issues that we're looking at next year and again into the future. Some of these are familiar to those of you who've been on council for a while. We're always going to look at maintaining the class comp plan. There's a number of cities in the valley, I mentioned this before too, that have done class comp studies or are planning to do class comp studies in future years. So we always keep a pretty close eye on that. We did okay this year, seeing what people implemented, which is why we recommended the 2% market shift in January and the 2% step increase in July. So not a huge increase required for all of staff or most of staff to maintain at about 100% of the market. Public safety retirements and PSPRS, we continue. Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
Before we move on to that next bullet, speaking of class comps, we talked about how we found out the corporate was below 10% below market value in this class comp. And one of the council inquiry that everybody got information on, I had a question about it. So so it says the HR does a market study of 1/3 of positions every year. I would like to see like the last 2 years so I could see 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 to see how it rotates. Because I don't know. To me, 1/3 of what, who got the last 2/3 before, the 1/3 before, 1/3 before. What's the rotation? What does that look like? Just so I can see how that flows. So somebody, if I don't want any section to say, well, how come our section's never been looked at? Well, here it is. It was looked at. Your 1/3 was this part. Your 1/3 was this part. Not, if there's nothing to show anybody, then it's hard for me to say, I don't know when your 1/3 was looked at. So that's one thing I would like to see, if possible. And then so when it comes to those cities that, like I know the league does one, right? The league does their own, and that doesn't cost us anything because we're league members. So that's part of the deal of being part of the league is they do those class comp studies, but it doesn't cover every job, right? From what I understand, sometimes they'll even ask us, hey, what do you pay this person or this position? Well, we don't have that, so it's NA for us. But these are mostly based on cities that respond. Like for instance, Bullhead City, Casa Grande, Paradise Valley. So if a city doesn't want to play or they don't respond, then do we just not get their info, or do we have to go out and reach out on our own and say we really should look at this city too, even though they didn't respond? Do we use their information at all, or do we have to go based off solely what is sent in for the report?
It depends on the position. So yes, we generally depend on what is sent in for the report.
Okay.
Because it's not just a number that HR is comparing as far as the salary. The job titles are very different across cities and counties and,
Right.
and states. So they compare the job responsibilities as well as the salaries. So that's why HR only does a third a year, because they would not have the time to do all positions. And
Yeah,
so
for
they
sure.
break it up and we get through every 3 years. But it's comparing both the job responsibilities and the number. If somebody doesn't respond, I'd have to check with HR to see if they still go out, but usually it's who responds to the survey, whose information we use.
All right.
And Mayor McCon, Mr. Rodriguez, Barbara's here and she can go over with you really quickly
Okay.
what she does, with regards to trying to track down the information.
Sure. Excellent.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So we have a core list of cities that are our most comparable cities, and that would be size-wise, position-wise, budget-wise, and stuff. And we do reach out to them directly, not just through the league survey, which every year we've participated in the league survey, and we do get that information. But we also reciprocate with all of those cities, and they need the same type of data we do, and we provide it to them. So we have really good results with them giving it, even if they don't participate in other surveys.
Okay.
Sometimes our timing is a little bit off. They're a few months ahead or a few months behind us, or they're waiting to work through budget issues before we know final numbers. But we do reach out to them directly, and we do have a very good response rate. It may not be as timely as we'd like to see it all the times, and ours may not be as timely back to them as they would like to see it, but we do reach out to those core cities. And then there's a few, positions that it's just difficult. Like, for example, a museum curator, there's not a lot of them around with the municipal government, so getting 3 comps and stuff can be difficult. So we'll reach out a little further. We may even go out of state for some of those positions, but we don't just send it out and say if they respond, they respond. We reach out, and we're very reciprocal in providing them data, so we get the same return from them.
Okay. So, based off of that, just a question. So, is it available for people to look at and say, here's the cities that you can compare to every time, right? Is that available? And then 2, when it comes to class comps, right? So I really appreciate that the directors do things like that. Like, hey, our employees are working more than they should, or they got to compare, on their own. A lot of those get sent up, and I appreciate that. So if that happens, the final say, though, is that based solely off of, so say a director says, hey, I think this person should be fall into this class, or they should be changed their class to raise up, but is it solely based off of, well, the study doesn't support that? What happens when those two meet and they don't match up?
It's not solely based on the study, because we have an internal and an external factor in the class and comp
Okay.
that we use, that was established when we implemented the class and comp. So we do have an internal component to that as well.
Okay.
So we're looking at the classifications above and below that, as well as with the responsibilities. Also, are they hard to fill positions? There's a lot of different factors that go into that. It's not just a one and done, but it's absolutely not just based on external report only.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your explanation. Thank you so much.
All right, you'll see street maintenance on this list, probably in perpetuity. Always going to be a challenge. But again, we are applying for a lot of grants to help us better address our road needs. And we should be seeing the results of the Pavement Condition Index survey in the next few months to see how well we've done in the past few years.
Appreciate the list that was sent to us that we've asked for, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that we can, when people ask us, is my street on that list?
Yeah.
That's the number one question we get. Is my street on that list, and why? Why not? So one is the index to say, well, there's what the index, we paid this company to show us this data. And then 2 is from that, we got this list and kind of explain patches versus crack seal versus replacing the whole road. So this tool is good for us to have as well, and to be made public so that people know if their street's on there or not.
and that still don't help though, 'cause they're gonna yell either way. At least it's there.
I included impact on local revenue from the state shared income tax reduction. This is going to be something to keep an eye on over the next few years. I think that's pretty clear on what's gone on in the past. We don't know what's coming in the future. One of the big changes this year was, so we had the change, the state legislature last year voted to change the income tax to a flat 2.5%. That was supposed to go into effect in 3 years. It was supposed to phase in. But there was a trigger in that bill that if the state's revenue crossed a certain threshold, that it could be implemented immediately, which is what happened last fall. And Governor Ducey decided to implement it immediately starting January 1st this year. So there were some other things that went on in the state legislature this spring, none of which were successful to further kind of curb that income tax revenue. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on that since it is a pretty significant part of the city's revenue. Kind of along with that are the census impacts on our local revenue, because as the state keeps growing, Sierra Vista continues to, it looks like, keep growing, but we grow at a much slower and smaller rate than the rest of the city. And especially when you have cities like, or up in the Valley area that are growing very quickly, since that state shared revenue is divided up based on population, their share of the pie is growing much faster than ours is. So that will and can impact our state shared revenue just by not growing as quickly as other parts of the state. And then we just threw in the economy because, as Chuck mentioned, his crystal ball hasn't been working great lately, but we keep hoping and trying to requisition one through Kenny. She's trying to work her magic on that. Just a quick reminder on your upcoming budget meetings. So we will add a work session to your next meeting here in May on the 24th. 23rd. Your tentative budget book, we will have that to you the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. You might not want to come in super early that afternoon, but Jen always works very hard and does her best. June 5th through the 7th are your one-on-one council meetings. If you have not scheduled those yet, please respond to Rochella to do that. Your special budget work sessions, June 12th through the 14th. Your tentative budget adoption, which will set that cap on the budget, is scheduled for June 22nd. Your public hearing on the property tax levy and your final budget adoption is July 27th. And then your final step is the tax levy adoption on August 10th. And with that, I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For our special budget work session, can we get that published like double what we used to do and get it out as much as possible for the people to come and if they want to come?
I'm writing a note for extra publishing on special budget work sessions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Victoria. Which part? What are we going over on May 23rd? Which part of?
Nothing, that's what we'll do.
Probably the other funds.
Just okay.
It'll be the full balanced budget with the other funds as well. So,
Oh, before we get the book though,
yeah, so
and we'll okay.
Will that be a long one?
just the summary numbers, so you know what's going on.
Okay, all right. Got it.
And if anyone wants to join me for my one-on-one, you're more than welcome to.
When are you doing yours?
I'll get you the date. I want to say it's the 6th, like 11.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor McCaw and members of council.
We'll proceed to item number B, Bravo, and that is CCOM. Welcome, Tammy.
Southeast Asia.
It's there.
Like that little squiggly, looks like hair on the bottom of the tank. Don't it?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council member. My name is Tammy Jo Wilkins, and I'm the interim director of the Southeastern Arizona Communications Center, also known as CCOM. We are a regional public safety answering point, or a PSAP, established in July of 2018 after Cochise County and the city of Sierra Vista entered into an IGA to provide emergency communication services to the region from a consolidated center. This has been done in partnership with the State of Arizona 911, who manages 81 PSAPs across Arizona. CCOM is the only dispatch center providing regional communication service in Arizona. The model is based on contracts with public safety entities, which we also call subscribers, who then receive an array of services from us. Currently, we serve 14 fire departments, 4 law enforcement agencies, 1 private ambulance company, and the National Park Service. We are a 24-hour countywide radio service through a system maintained by Cochise County IT through a contract with CCOM. We're 24-hour phone coverage to include both administrative and 911 calls using the Vesta 911 platform. We have certified operators providing priority dispatch services in 3 modules. We're using police, fire, and EMS. We utilize Spillman Records services. We have a lot of access to statistical information, and we monitor and communicate with active units through phone, radio, and mobile data computers, or MDCs, in each service vehicle. I wanted to share some statistics about the calls that have been coming into CCOM. In 2022, there was 50,480 911 calls alone to the center, with a total of 201,762 total calls incoming. That includes admin lines, with 34,560 outgoing for the call center for the year. In 2021, there was 54,888 calls to the center, with a grand total of 148,173 total calls, including the admin lines and the outgoing for the year. So that shows a major increase in the calls that we're receiving. Our CAD activity in 2022, we entered approximately 149,968 calls for service, which 93,453 were law enforcement related, 3,890 were for fire, and 18,425 were for EMS. In 2021, CCOM entered approximately 100,889 calls for service, with 82,517 law enforcement, 3,621 for fire, and 14,751 for EMS. With our priority dispatch system, also known as ProQA, it's a software that provides our 911 dispatchers with the training to provide pre-arrival assistance to callers in the event that they have an emergency in a police, fire, or medical situation. Most recently, one of our trainees who recently came off of the training program delivered a baby in Wilcox using our priority dispatch. It's quite exciting. CCOM is the only agency in Arizona that uses the 3 ProQA modules, and the dispatchers obtain and maintain a personal certification that is recognized through the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch. They're required to recertify on that every year, and they're required to keep up with their continuing education credits. This helps us with building standards. This offers the ability to differentiate between fire and EMS requests for service. And through the use of CAD and various phone reporting systems, the staff is able to identify which times are our busiest and which days are our busiest so that we can staff accordingly. Training and continuous credits are encouraged for all staff to maintain their certifications. Currently, our structure is as follows. We have our JPA, our Joint Powers Board, and under that, we have an operations committee. I'm the interim director. I was appointed in February of this year. Our administrator is currently vacant. We recently promoted a second floor supervisor, so now we have 2. 16 dispatchers, and we're hoping for two call takers in the upcoming budget for the year. Full staffing on the floor will be at 20, and right now we're at 18, which is the first in a couple of years. Under the IGA, the City of Sierra Vista is the fiscal agent, and the principals are the City of Sierra Vista and Cochise County. We have a partner in Huachuca City, and we have 16 subscribers. Cochise County owns the building at 1728 Paseo San Luis and controls the radio and IT functions. The City of Sierra Vista manages the employees and is responsible for the budget, finance, procurement, media, and personnel issues. All of our employees are City of Sierra Vista employees. Accomplishments in CCOM since February I'd like to share. As I've transitioned into the director position while doing the administrator duties, I reassigned the administrator duties to myself and to a floor supervisor in hopes to play some catch up. We located and made contacts and caught up on all billing. We hired a second floor supervisor. We applied for the 911 grant for next fiscal year. We're working on important partnerships across the county. We're addressing complaints and staff concerns as they come up, and we need to. We're working towards our next Gen 911 upgrade, which will occur in July, on July 18th. We will start with some training coming into the facility 3 weeks before that cutover. We're building trainer plans in-house to address the number of new trainees we have. So we have 9 of them, 4 of them which are currently on the console in training, and 5 that are getting ready to come to the console to go to training.
That's my question.
And then we're rebuilding the internal staffing plan, making adjustments and preparing for Wilcox and Bisbee PSAPs to switch over to CCOM full-time effective July 1st. This is an example of our revenue contributions for the next fiscal year. You can see where Bisbee is going to be contributing $126,950 and Wilcox at $99,450. This is because they'll be coming on board with us full-time for the grand total of $2,759,518. Budget by category, and I did split this up so that you have an example of what fiscal year 23 looks like versus what we're requesting for fiscal year 24. In our personnel category, the reason why that's down a little bit is because we're trying to reclassify some positions and in hopes to give some internal incentive for promotional opportunities. Travel and training was reduced because we haven't been using it. We haven't been able to. Professional services has increased due to the fact that we've had so many people coming in all at once, and we need to make sure we can pay for things like backgrounds and other fees. I keep forgetting what she said. The utilities is running about a couple thousand in addition. Association memberships has only gone up about just under $100. The IT services for fiscal year 24 is about $100,000 less than it was last year. But for the grand total of fiscal year 24 request of $2,759,519. That concludes my presentation. The city contribution is looking like $914,076, and the county contribution is at $984,576, and that's an increase of $28,677 over fiscal year 23.
Yes, ma'am. City Manager had it.
Yeah, just a little bit more information. Thank you, Tammy Jo. Very good. First, Tammy Jo mentioned that Wilcox and Bisbee will be coming on board in July. That will only leave Benson and Douglas not in CCOM in Cochise County. We are working on an agreement with Douglas to provide backup service, mutual aid backup services to each other. So hopefully that will be coming on board over the next fiscal year. And Benson is Benson, and I'm not sure,
Understand.
what's going on there. But eventually, I think they'll have to come in because of the high costs of providing these services. So at some point, just like the other ones realized they needed to come in, I believe they will as well. Actually, CCOM could expand beyond the borders of Cochise County as well, so we'll work on Cochise County first, and if areas such as Safford and others want to join in later, I think we have the ability to do that. You heard me mention staffing over and over again over the last year and a half. As Tammy Jo reported, that situation has improved pretty dramatically. We actually have more of a problem getting them all trained, than we do actually bringing them in. So kudos to CCOM staff and Barbara for getting that situation under control here. So that's a very good thing. In terms of the actual budget, if you notice on the revenue line, there's $380,000 of fund balance being used this year that was generated over last year primarily because of the staffing shortage. And the situation that we have is we had a grant for our Motorola system. That is probably one of the most expensive components of running CCOM. It was over $3 million, and I believe it was over 7 years, 6 or 7 years. Jen's back there. But the governor has pulled that funding, so if we have a chance to see her, we want to ask if that can be restored, and we are working to try to get those dollar amounts restored. But in the meantime, we have fund balance broken up into 2 years to pay for any of the upgrades that we need that may hit us in the future and cause costs to go up, overall to CCOM, but we'll work very hard to try to do that. Overall, I think the system is working the way it was intended. We've got most all the members of Cochise County on. Our collaborative efforts with the Sheriff's Office primarily has done very well in terms of bringing outside funding to the effort. As a result, we have excellent equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, and state-of-the-art software that she mentioned with ProQA and training for our people as well. So I think we're more advanced than anywhere in the state with regards to dispatch services. And again, it's a credit to Tammy Jo and all the people working down there that have done a great job there. So I see a bright future for CCOM moving forward.
Those 5 individuals that's in training, when do you expect they'll be on the council taking calls?
I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks. It might be a little bit longer.
Okay.
So, so she has the ones in training, they're coming on very soon, and then hopefully the other ones that are completing their background will be in. That'll take a few months, though, to get them on board.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, a few questions. For one, just comment the ProQA system. Very impressed with that. I've been popping into CCOM at night, and happened to watch firefighter River Davis do a call, do chest compressions with somebody to the paramedic showed up out there in. It was out in McNeil, so that was nice to see that in action. And then right back to another call, just like nothing happened. So
Yes.
definitely some professionals working there, very well trained. Obviously, he's got a firefighter background, so that helps a lot, I'm sure. So that was good to see in action. The 16 people that you have, or you said there's 18. I know you explained there's some in training, but I seem to be seeing the same people there.
Yes.
So I'm trying to see where are they at? Somebody told me that they're working at the animal shelter in the meantime.
Well, what you have really is 9 currently, okay? Those 9 full-time on. The 4 or 5 that Tammy Jo mentioned that are in training that will be on in the next few weeks. So you'll start seeing new faces in there at that point. The other 5 that make the 18 will still take a few more months of training. So that's why you're still seeing some of the same faces
Okay.
in there.
The numbers just didn't add up to faces I've seen. It's okay. All right.
Councilmember Rodriguez, if I just may add, how many, we only have 4 or 5 trainers, right?
We have 4 trainers
So we
currently.
only have 4 trainers, so they can only train 4 at a time. So the
Okay.
rest of them, are getting experience of some of the other agencies while they're waiting for those trainers to open up when those other trainees.
Okay.
That's why you're seeing them like that.
Yeah, and I've seen some do ride along stuff like that in the meantime, which is that's good. I mean, they obviously get this experience to see it, to be out there, to see the calls as they're doing them. But I definitely would want to see them taking calls as soon as possible. I mean, I know the background check. This thing, it's kind of ridiculous how long that's taking. Now there's a lot of parts to that, but it's kind of frustrating to see that that's still
But
an
even
issue.
if that happened, they still wouldn't have a trainer for them to sit there and train them. So they still wouldn't be able to answer the phones yet. So.
Okay, all right. The 911 grant for next year. How much was that going to bring, or how much do you guys expecting?
I wrote the grant for $580,000.
Okay, and that is there stipulations on what it can be used for, or?
Yes, that will be a reimbursement grant
Okay.
for some of the equipment that we utilize with the 911 call center.
Awesome. Thank you. So then the revenue contributions, right? Just so I'm understanding, this is all based off of population, based off call volume. What is those numbers based off for everybody that participates in the program?
Actually, Victoria is the expert on the funding
Okay.
formula, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Rodriguez. So the funding formula is based on, first, a number was determined for a base position. So the number of dispatchers who would be present on a shift on a regular basis. So for most communities, that's one. I think Sierra Vista and the county were both figured at 6. Then you have a number that is determined for, based on the number of radios used, so both mobiles and portables, 500 for one, 1,000 for the other, and that is calculated into their final amount.
Okay. So that's what everybody comes to the table with. Everybody has to bring that. That's how they know how much to pay into the systems, to the revenue contribution. Okay.
Yeah, one other point I do want to make to you is, while that's a good reflection of the revenue coming in and the costs, we are still working through the in-kind contributions that both the county and the city make to support CCOM that aren't reflected in the revenue and cost numbers. So when she mentioned the IT support, building support, the county is doing that in kind, as well as our services for the administrative services. We are also contributing in kind. So it's our hope that once we're able to assimilate all those costs into CCOM, we're going to then have to reassess those costs for the subscribers. Obviously, they'll go up at that point in time. But right now, we think it's way more important to get everybody on board and then work through that and then make a determination as to when we need to start charging for those in-kind services.
Okay. All right, thank you. Then it says Fort Huachuca hosting in parentheses. So that means, I mean, obviously they have a dispatch on Fort Huachuca as well. So what does the hosting mean?
We host their backup systems in our
Okay.
building.
Okay, so just the fact that we host their backup there. Okay,
Spillman as well.
Yes.
awesome. All right. The last thing, so I just wanted the governor's pulling the grant, right? So I noticed the IT services, people are going up, but the IT services are going down. And I think you hit on that, but I couldn't understand the difference there again. And what does that have to do with the grant? How does that correlate? IT services, the Motorola grant, with the numbers, how does that match up?
Some of the IT services have increased due
Okay.
to everything increasing in the last year. And then, of course, with the SUA maintenance fees, that's an additional charge to us that we have to budget for.
Okay. No, I was mentioning
But the question is, why
IT
did the IT budget
It went
go
down.
down a little bit this year?
Yeah, I can find out and let you know.
Jen may know that. Jen probably does know that.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Councilmember Rodriguez, the IT services, I believe, went down because we did a 130,000 variant upgrade last year.
Okay.
And then the DEMA grant was for the capital for the SUA2 and for the Motorola maintenance, which is about 130,000.
Right on. Thank you. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the variant was a one-time cost.
Gotcha.
The SUA2 Motorola is an ongoing cost.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my comments.
All right.
I'm just gonna go.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. We'll go right, we'll go left to right.
Thank you for taking the time. I know you're super busy. I don't even know how you're standing here right now, but because you're doing your job and the administrator job with help from someone else. And is that job, the administrator job, is that currently listed? Are you trying to recruit for that right now?
Not at this time. I'm trying to reclassify that position to a communications manager.
That's one of the reclassified. Okay, and
The administrator recently resigned.
Yeah.
So it's giving Tammy Jo the opportunity to do some restructuring. So,
and what's the reason you're changing it to a communications? What did you call it?
A communications manager. I'd like the opportunity for, in hopes that we could recruit from internally, so that there's an extra layer of promotional availability.
That's what you were, okay, I remember you mentioning that.
and Carolyn, just to clarify, the incumbent administrator who recently resigned came over from the city and was at a relatively high pay rate in relation to the rest of the staff, and that was a result of that resulted from the pay that that individual was receiving here. So we had to classify that position as an administrator level to justify the expense. So
Okay.
with what I agree with what Tammy Jo is trying to do here, and that'll bring that pay level at a little lower level for CCOM as well.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Oh, is it?
Question?
That was it, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a couple. And not just for you, Tammy Jo, welcome aboard, and you've done excellent since taking over in February. Chiefs, I think it's more towards them, so I'll just ask you, and if they want to answer. Response time since we went to CCOM, have we seen an increase in the response times?
Mayor McCaw, Councilmember Benning, we have not seen an increase in response times. We've actually seen a decrease in response times, especially in Station 4's area. And also with ProQA and Station Learning, it allows for really a zero response time based on the dispatchers being able to give instructions en route. So they're providing EMS care or giving fire instruction prior to fire apparatus or EMS arriving.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Next question. JPA Board, how many people on the board, and who's our representative from Sierra Vista?
Well, that would be me, but currently there are 4 members on the JPA board. That's Sheriff Daniels, myself, Chief Savage from Fry Fire, and then Wachuca City's, Suzanne Harvey, yeah. So the board will be expanding to 6 in July, and that will include Mr. Pauken from Bisbee and Mr. Blaschke from Wilcox will be joining the board at that point in time.
Okay. And then in relationship to revenue, let's go back to more our money is coming out. How does this work? If you, either one of y'all or all 3 of y'all can split. So we pay $918,000 is our total, but we manage all the money, which means, so in the beginning of the fiscal year, does each of these cities buy in at the same time, one lump sum? Or how do we get the money from?
Invoice, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor McCaw and members of council. Councilmember Benning, the cities are invoiced throughout the year.
Okay.
And Jen is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but we tend to work out the schedule with the cities. So some of them want to pay it all up front. Some of them want to be billed a couple times throughout the year. Some want to be billed at the end of the year. So
Okay.
I think we adjust it to whatever works for them.
Okay, and then we take out the total, like the 2.7 and some change, that comes straight out of either O&M or personnel under our main budget, right? So that 20, let me get there, I apologize, I knew the number in my head, but I forgot it. So for instance, the 34 million for personnel requests, that includes the 1.9 million from CCOM or no? Is it, or, does that make sense?
Oh, I
I
see what you're.
understand what you're
And
asking.
the O&M, et cetera. So when we approve our budget, or we're approving their budget also, correct?
Well, let Jen respond to the first question, and I'll respond to this.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benning, the I believe you're referring to the general fund personnel numbers. CCOM has its own fund,
Okay,
so it's in addition to. So when you do the total tentative budget, it'll be all.
I knew that.
So-
Just beat me up afterwards.
So, and the way this works is when the city and the county entered into the IGA to form the Joint Powers Authority, which you're allowed to do by statute, it essentially is its own separate governing board. It's a very interesting relationship. But in fact, you have to approve the budget along with the County Board of Supervisors as principals to CCOM. So that's why Tammy Jo presented to the Board of Supervisors last week and why she is presenting to you, because it doesn't work unless the council approves your share of the budget for CCOM. So, but we also have the responsibility as fiscal agent to present the numbers in the budget as well.
And then I think one final thing that you were getting at, Mr. Benning, the way we budget for this. So as an agency fund, CCOM works a little differently. We do budget the city's contribution, the 900-some thousand, actually goes in police department professional services. And then I believe we budget the revenue that we expect in from everybody else's against that total budget.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you and welcome aboard. Now,
Thank you.
question. So, if we approve the budget and the Board of Supervisors says no, who trumps who?
Well,
Because we got to operate.
well, you have a pretty complex intergovernmental agreement
Yes.
with Cochise County on this, and actually, there's a poison pill provision in there. It allows for either party to leave the agreement, but all the assets in the operation then go to the remaining member. So we have powerful incentive to stay in CCOM, as does the county. So
And I'm asking not only just for CCOM, there's other things going on within the county and the city that may turn into the same type of situation. So getting ready for some things coming forward, but welcome aboard and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We had an opportunity, I encourage everyone to go down to see CCOM and see the operations going on. Some remarkable work, thank you for all you do, and to the dispatchers as well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
We go to item number Delta. No, item number Charlie, I'm sorry. 18-month update on the council strategic plan.
All right, thank you, Mayor
Ma'am.
McCaw, members of council. So I'll give you the highlights version of the 18-month report, and then any questions at any time, of course, and you have all the members of staff here, I believe, who could answer any questions on any individual items. But I'll start with, we have a couple of things that are behind schedule. I think it's pretty clear why they're behind schedule, starting with our very first goal, which is the reduction of city-owned streets that fall into the very poor or poor classifications, again referring to that pavement condition index survey. I mark this one as behind schedule not because there hasn't been improvement on our streets, but because this goal was also tied to that measurement that comes through the PCI survey, which I mentioned is in process, and it will be concluded later this year, and we will report back to mayor and council what progress has been made. In streets that were rated as fair and poor in the past PCI survey did receive priority in the past few years, and so it is expected that that number should have improved when that updated survey comes back. Another behind schedule was 5.1, which is the Highway 90 repaving. I think everybody's well aware of the status of that, but we should see that happen later this year in the October and November timeframe. And then the final one that's behind schedule, we only have 3 at this point, which is great, is goal 15.2, which is expanding the animal shelter. And that is proposed in your budget for next year, $2 million to proceed with that expansion, which would start next, or this fall if approved. A few items moved into completion. 6.5.1, which was construction of Avenida Escuela, 8.1 was the completion of the joint resources utilization study, which wrapped up last summer and then closed out last fall. 11.4 was evaluating how people were counted at events. Staff tried a few different things and found a really neat piece of software called Placer, which will tell us where people attending events are coming from, where they stay, and how much they spend while in town. So we're really looking forward to getting that information on future events. Goals 16.5 and 16.6 were on the neighborhood partnership program, and the street tree planting program was incorporated into it, and that launched this past December. A couple of other highlights that I wanted to mention. Goal 1.2, that detailed the significant amount of funding that staff applied for and received through the FTA for street infrastructure projects. So that will go towards multi-use paths along Buffalo Soldier Trail from Golf Links to Fry Boulevard, and then along Highway 92 from Avenida Cochise to Foothills, along with, there were multiple FTA grants that were applied for and received, which will also address curb, gutter, and sidewalk in different areas of the city, repaving, and solar streetlights. So that was a relatively new source of funding that staff identified a couple of years ago, and we're already starting to see some great results, or will be as those kick off. Goal 6.2.2 is the North Garden Avenue improvements. The project design is very close to completion and should be going out for bid for construction pretty much at any time now, and then hopefully kicking off early this summer. So those funds also will carry over to next year, so you'll be seeing that construction start pretty soon, which is very exciting.
And excuse me. Do we know how long, once it starts, how long it'll take to complete construction?
Sharon, do you have
What's
any
the
idea?
estimate?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Humphrey, I don't have a specific time frame right now, but my best guess I could give you is probably around 9 months.
Okay. All right.
So
It's
hopefully
'cause
early next spring.
I'm just wondering.
Remember
I
Fry
know-
Boulevard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and it's smaller, so I thought, but with the U of A moving in, and I know they don't anticipate opening till like 12 or 18 months. They have to wait on their special U of A architect to do everything. I was just hoping it would we would be done before they opened up, and we're,
Sounds like we
I'll
will
give
be.
you the high end and we'll hope for the best.
We already have a McDonald's, they can just copy it for their training classes.
I'm sure they considered that. Yeah,
That's wrong.
Yeah.
it's got to look a certain way.
McDonald's.
Okay, highlighting goal 10.1, that one's expanded participation in sporting events. Laura and her team have done amazing, and the revenue is looking very strong. And I expect we'll report at your final strategic plan update that staff well exceeded the $3 million revenue increase target with the success again of El Tour de Zona in March, and then the upcoming Summit Challenge and Wine, Beer, and Spirits Festival. Goal 12.1 is the one related to restrooms. So after some delays, as Laura presented last week, we're on track for the installation of the first round of new restrooms out at the Veterans Park Sports Complex and then near the pickleball courts. And again, I mentioned the LWCF grant that we'll be applying for to do the next round next year. And then finally, goal 15.4, the creation of the Better Work program from the grant from the Arizona Department of Housing, which picked up a combined 19,860 pounds of trash, and 5 of the 17 participants found jobs and 4 secured housing, which are great statistics, and a lot of hard work has gone into that project as well.
Yes.
So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions as well as any questions for staff present.
Can you just repeat those numbers from what you just said?
19,000.
Was it 19?
Okay, the Better Work program
Yeah.
picked up a combined 19,860 pounds of trash.
Okay.
And then 5 of the 17 participants found jobs through the program and 4 secured housing.
Thank you.
For security. You good?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to say thank you to staff, and I was at a meeting this Saturday, and Better Bucks and Better Works was the rave of the whole meeting. They stopped talking about the budget, everything else, and they just wanted to talk about Better Bucks and Better Works. So a lot of the programs we're doing are coming along, I think, better than expected, that we even expected. So just appreciate everything you did. And then, because I'm a newfound pickleball fan, even though I can't play, I just go out there and watch because I can't hit the bracket yet. I think staff and council should have a big tournament thing, invite people to come watch us beat up on staff, but in pickleball. So I'm gonna work on that, and we'll get that going, Parks and Rec.
You're gonna have
Some
surgery
really
on
good
your head.
firefighters.
I don't care, I got a left hand.
Schedule.
They say fire, and I said staff.
We have to exempt certain departments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
None of you guys.
Oh, brittle bones bending, not talking about playing sports.
You know what? I'm good, man. I can watch that ball go left and right. I can't hit it yet, but so that's coming. Just a FYI, it's coming.
Commit to that.
Oh, I'm committing you. You committed us to some stuff too. I'm committing you. It's easy, man. There's like 90-year-olds out there hitting the ball. It's
That's
like,
what your mouth say.
I watched it, but that's it. I just want to say thank you and get you the warning that and Mr. Boone can't play either, and neither can you, and all them people in tip-top shape. Yeah, no. That's it.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. Got a lot. 6.3.1. So it's ongoing, right? We're talking about annexation and stuff like that, right? So moving along down Highway 92, right? We're expanding down that way. Some of the business owners asked about turning lane changes, right? It's only right only, right? For safety reasons previously. That was not us before. That was county decisions were made to put the roads the way they are, right? So those businesses, if
ADOT probably.
right, sorry,
made that
ADOT.
decision.
Okay. So the process, if they wanted to say, hey, can we look at this to see if we can turn left as well, out of Circle K, out of that big long building that's down there now, further down where the flower shop's at. What would they need to do? The best avenue to say, like, here's where we want, as business owners, we all want to come together and say, how do we turn left on this road to support our business flow, right? Obviously, it's not a city thing for us to make the decision. It would have to be an ADOT survey, I'm assuming, ADOT safety. But what's the avenue to do it?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Rodriguez, that would have to be a request that would need to go to ADOT. However, I can tell you, being involved in the project that put the medians down that roadway, and PD and Fire could speak more to it, but that was done as a result of a very significant accident history along that segment of roadway, including incapacitating injuries and fatalities along that roadway segment. So it was done for safety reasons. I don't know if there's anything you gentlemen wanted to add.
Okay. Good.
In other words, it'll be difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like a snowball's chance. Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure that the process was out there and the background on that so people understand. Thank you. Some of this is already covered. You talked about parking lots for the baseball field. All right. Goal 7. Right. We talked about our digital marketing, things like that. I mean, I like the data, the 140,000 click engagement, but I'd like to see, like, connect the dots. Where does that get us? What do we get from those clicks? Who has come to our city because of those things, and who is these people clicking? Is it just Will embedding in a room, bored one day, clicking on our website a bunch of times?
That's what I do every Friday night.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of that.
Can we get that data?
Judy's here and she
Right
can
on.
address that. So.
Thank you.
Hello, Councilmember Rodriguez, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The data really goes into a lot more detail in the executive report.
Okay.
It tells you where those people are coming from, and you know what information they're asking for, so you can get that in the executive report. As far as who they are, we can get some demographic information. but I couldn't tell you that, John Smith from Tucson is
Right.
clicking on that. It's just simply not possible. So generally, what I have done, I'm looking at what the impact of these clicks is, and it's general practice in the tourism industry is to look at your extended stay tax or hotel tax as one of the measures, and also restaurant and bar tax revenues. So I do watch those trends. In my report, I direct you to the finance report because they're in there, so why should I repeat it? But I can get you a trend analysis if you want. It has been, we did drop, of course, during COVID, but it's coming back up, and those revenues are looking pretty good in both of those categories.
Okay, and just to clarify, so Buxton was what we used to use, right? And they're gone now. We don't use them
Right.
anymore. And so now Marcom is what we're going with now, the data from Marcom?
Well, we're looking at Placer, the same thing that Victoria
Right.
mentioned that Laura is using, and also Tony is using that. So actually, for my upcoming tourism presentation, I've got some really neat data that I pulled out of there that I can share with you, and that does tell us a little bit more detail about their age, their income level, their interests. So it really gets into those psychographics that let us know if we're targeting the right audiences with our marketing projects.
Okay. And from what I understand, it's hard or not, we're not able to show data from our partners that come from the South, from Mexico to come in and shop and see our events. That data is just not represented at all. Even
Right.
though we know that's a huge part. We saw obviously from COVID when the border was closed and we saw nobody from there coming shopping. Now, you look at the license plates all over the place shopping as well. They're a huge part of our revenue and business area, but there's no way to capture that data.
There is no way that's financially feasible. I'm sure it can be captured, but it's not something that we have the tools to do.
Okay. So I want to make sure that was still a thing. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Before you go forward, let me ask a question on the same. Are we doing any data mining?
What are you asking me?
Like, like at the park during an event, are we gathering information of people that come to our event?
As far as, Laura can answer that, but my answer is Placer. Go for it, Laura.
Well, thank you, Judy. My answer is also Placer. But what we're finding out is that Placer is giving us data like, and we're working with their representatives to interpret the data a little bit better. But I really like the part where it tells us like the top 5 things, like where they're coming from and where they go to before and after the event. And you can like see a map. I'm gonna start dropping that in to our executive report after events. I just looked at Westfest yesterday. There were 5,000 people at Westfest. And what I love about that is in the industry of event planning and throwing, you would basically look at a section and count the people within that section, and then multiply that by how many sections that size in order to come up with a best guess. Now we actually have people. Like it can it's a little bit Big Brother. I'm not gonna lie, but I love it. We all get this information. We give this information when we don't know it when we go to other places. It's really neat to have it here, but you can see where people come from their home or they come from work, and I'm like, how do they even know that? And it's because they track like over a period of time how many times they go back to this place, and it just very quickly brings it. Or it says they'll leave like an event and they'll go to Walmart or they'll go to McDonald's. It's wild. It's wild. It's almost too much information. It's beautiful. I love everything about it.
And then can we tie Placer into license plate readers?
I believe that's illegal.
No.
All right, since we're talking about data mining, I want to let people know when we get these license plate readers, we're not going to do that. That's what I question.
Personally identifying information from it, it is simply numbered. We do not know addresses of homes or any personally identifying.
This information, you have to consent to giving this information to the company collecting it. You're probably, I'm sure no one reads it, but you click,
It's on your cell phone every
I
time
want to
you
use this
Yeah,
thing.
every time you get on
So,
this.
yeah, okay.
Every
We're not
time
like
you
illegally.
download an app and you accept the terms of
Download
use.
an app or go to
So
an
Placer's
event.
mining the data from your
Go to
cell
an
phone
event
because it's
also.
sending that up.
Thank you. So Placer's like, I think Tony showed me one time, like a lot of people went to Sonic after an event and Walmart after an event. They love those two places after events for whatever reason. Sonic and Walmart's the place to go after an event in Sierra Vista, which is
Yes,
interesting.
Sonic, mhm.
Which hopefully they're subscribing as well, and they get that data, so they put more people, maybe more employees will work that day because they know, hey, they're coming. They're coming to get a Route 44, or they're coming to Walmart to whatever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Add one thing to that
Yes, ma'am.
on behalf of Judy. What we've also been able to see with her clicks, when you specifically asked about clicks, is the amount of clicks go up. Like if we know that we're having a sports tournament, we can start seeing people from places like clicking. They're actively going to get information,
Yeah.
and now Placer's giving us the other half of that. We're not going to get everything that we'd all
So,
love to see.
so now we can spam them with like offers, like, hey, there's a tournament.
yeah,
Sierra Vista.
exactly.
I get you. I get where you're saying. I like it. Okay. Appreciate that. 10.2, right, there's a comment there that was interesting. Access to traffic control, cones, barricades, right? I noticed that when they come, we see all those things out there, but they're not ours, right? It's not from us, it's not from the yard. They contract from a company in Tucson to bring those things out here, right? Because we don't have the capacity to provide that. Now, is that like, hey, if I want to start a business right now, I might get in the traffic cone business and the sign business because we don't have that in our city, right? Is that something else? I know, reading that comment, it made it sound like, yeah, we have some cones and stuff for what we normally do, but for big events, they have to know that, hey, you got to bring your own stuff or contract with somebody because we cannot support that, right? Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Rodriguez, we do maintain an inventory of cones, barricade signs for typical traffic control functions. But if you're talking something on the scope of an El Toro de Zona, we do not have that kind of inventory available, nor do we have the specialized signs that would accompany that type of event.
Okay.
Small little event, like a 5K or something like
Right.
that, we have that inventory.
Okay. Thank you very much. 10.5, expanding reach to the sports community. I know Laura's been doing a lot of this. John is out there, and I just one thing I want to highlight, like the A.V. Anderson Disc Golf Park, right? They've been working well, asking John, asking Laura, asking me questions, and trying to get this the best disc golf course out there possible. Because we have people that come from, if you go out there on a Saturday and just talk to the guys that show up, they're from Phoenix, from Utah. People come from far away to use our little A.V. Anderson Park, which is amazing. But just like they had the idea of, hey, can we get some of your mulch that the city makes and make one of our nice little basket areas with mulch, right? So that was a great idea. It's local stuff. It's our mulch used at our city park. So I love those ideas, right? Because it improves our stuff with resources that we already have locally. Didn't have to outsource it. It came from all of your Christmas trees that you dropped off, all your green waste that you dropped off. So I like that it stays in the community. That's a great example. I just wanted to bring some attention to that. One thing, 10.6 right below that, supposed to go visit the Vail Park complex in Mesa, right? There's a big old problem with that park. They're going bankrupt, don't know if they're gonna stay afloat, so I'm not sure we can learn a lot from that. It's a beautiful complex. I've been there for some sporting events. It's amazing. It looks like something you'd see in Las Vegas, but we definitely need to learn from what not to do from the city of Mesa. Yes, when it comes to that Mesa Sporting Complex, because that is not going well for them. So definitely something of note, because we mentioned it here in our thing to go visit them. Just might want to take some more notes on that place, on that process, how they're going.
That's a good sports complex too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. 14. Get in there. Public Works Department, right? Maintaining staff, blah, blah, blah. Recruiting strategies citywide, growth opportunities, internships. I like that, right? Or it says opportunity students in military. The youth Commission wants to do a youth job fair specifically for youth in our city, right? People that don't want to go to college right away, don't want to go to the military, don't want to go get a clearance. So I think this would be perfect to represent at a job fair like that. Is here's our city jobs that you can get right now with a high school diploma, and you can stay right here and support the city until you decide if you want to leave or not. And then the Skill Bridge program is something that I think is definitely underutilized all around. So I think I like that as well. Moving on to recruiting. Sorry, there's a lot. Again, recruiting for PD. I know that they're going to Fort Bliss a lot, but I haven't talked to anybody that came from Fort Bliss. So maybe what's the strategy of looking at other cities? Like when I'm in my mind, I think of like Barstow, NTC, 29 Palms, all the places you don't want to be in the military,
Lake.
that you want to leave. Because I think the problem with going to Texas is people don't want to leave Texas, right? I used to be that person. I'm still Texan at heart, but is there anything looking at those other bases like Fort Polk, Louisiana, right? All the places in our minds that we're like, oof, where can we go next
That's a good
where we can
point.
sell our city, you know? Is there anything like that, Chief?
So our experience at the military bases, we're having difficulty with those places in terms of recruiting anybody to come to Arizona. Fort Bliss and the Las Cruces area, because it's such a similar type of environment to what
Okay.
we are, that was the attraction. We have had applicants from there. They have not gotten through the process. We have had that happen. We do have now a link with the Community College Academy that they have in the Fort Bliss area in El Paso. So we're hoping to piggyback off of that. We are hitting California pretty hard in terms of recruiting. We want to expand out, not necessarily just the military bases, but the local community colleges. In those, we're having more success in that than the military bases, to be quite honest with you. Although we are still starting to see some success with the career skills program. I just got word today, there's another one that's interested from Fort Huachuca that wants to come through on board on that. So that would be our third or fourth one in that program. So,
Great. I love hearing the skill bridge program used. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that. 16.1,
16.1.
getting there. We're moving. A lot of good examples there. Right. The whole thing is improve the form, function, character of environment of Sierra Vista. Right. We've talked about this a lot of places. We're missing out on hummingbird stuff. Like we're the hummingbird capital of the U.S.
I agree.
Right. Our little swag that we give away for different places. We just had a meet and greet. Right. I love our little flags, little magnetic flags, but man, we really need to turn it up a little bit. Right. I don't want to take money from anybody that's going to use it for other stuff, but I think if we're talking about Sierra Vista, Buffalo Soldiers, hummingbirds, stuff like that, we really need to.
I mean, we have our own budget where we can bring
Yeah.
that out of too.
Right. I've liked the Chiricahua Apache Leader, if you didn't notice there on the guard. I love that statue up there. So things like that, we're getting there. I really appreciate that, but we're missing the boat on a few things when it comes to hummingbird capital of the U.S. I keep saying that should be on the sign on I-10. It should have ADOT. Home of the Buffalo Soldiers. Home of the.
We got to work on
Hummingbird
making
capital
it
of the U.S.
official U.S. level. Yeah.
We got to get it. Okay.
We'll write it in.
We'll, yeah.
Yes.
We'll say
Yes,
something.
great paint.
Thank you. You mentioned the trees earlier, 16.5, right? Tree planting programs, which is awesome. I'm all about planting the trees. Obviously our city, where a lot of people think of Arizona, they don't think of what Sierra Vista looks like till they get here. We have a lot of trees. There's that program out there, the Tree City USA, all right? You can be a Tree City USA. Have we looked into that? Did we qualify for that? Is there ever being looked into that? And
Yes.
Anyone.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
anyone?
We've looked into it. Or Judy, you can, I know when I looked into it, I think it required hiring an arborist on
Okay.
staff, so, yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. We did look at it, but it does require that. That was
So you have to hire an arborist.
an arborist.
Okay.
It's hard enough to find a park supervisor. We're skeptical that we'd be able to find an arborist in the community,
Yeah.
but it would require a dedicated position.
So it could be like a reclass job of you're this, but you're also an arborist. That wouldn't work.
I think there's more that goes into being an arborist, a certification.
I mean, I know we budget for trees, we plan it along, and we look for grants, but Tree City USA comes with that. They send you funding, they send you trees and things like that. So I just know the background on that. I'm sure somebody had looked into it before I thought of that idea. Okay. The visitsierravista.com website, I went to it. I like it. Obviously, it just needs some updates. Like Windermere's still on there. The doesn't mention that there's a hotel now for veterans up there. Just things like some of our new businesses aren't mentioned that I was looking for, like Twisted Ramen, Gogi, Ricardo's is still there. They've closed now. That's a new steakhouse. So just need whoever looks at that. It definitely needs a once over because we got some new stuff in our community that needs to be represented for anybody that's coming from all those clicks out there. They need to see that. That's all I have. Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to say thank you for presenting the 20-month update. It started at 18 months and then, then Mark took over, but, no, good input, Mr. Rodriguez, thank
I
you.
apologize, this 30-page report takes a little bit of time to get through, so
No,
we
it
had
was
some
good
budget stuff
presentation.
going.
Ricardo's is under new management.
Yeah, it's a whole new
Yeah.
place. It's a steak,
And
Sierra
they raised the prices and they.
Sierra Steakhouse.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. All right. Anything else there? Mr. Robo? And we go to item number Delta, report on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings.
I got one tonight if y'all wanna stop by.
That's sports.
5:30 at the community center.
All right.
It's gonna be a good one. It's always a good one. It's Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. All right. Any others? Ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So far on your agenda for the May 23rd work session, I mentioned the budget presentation earlier. We'll have a presentation by Judy on tourism and the Cochise County Tourism and Economic Development Council. And I'm also ready to present your draft fiscal year 24-25 strategic plan for you to begin consideration on that.
All right. Yes. Any other questions, comments? Well, I failed to note that Councilman Johnson is absent. He's a little arthritis, in pain. So we make a note of that. Hope he's feeling well.
Yeah, hope you feel better soon, Greg.
Yes, feel better soon there, Mr. Johnson, for the thousands viewing on YouTube.
They are watching. I need their thoughts this Friday too, so.
All right. So with that, any more comments, questions? Thank you, Tammy Jo. Thank you, Jen, everyone that played a part in presenting this information to us. With that, we are adjourned.